Khadijah. Say your full title, Khadijah, though. Doctor.
Dr. Khadijah Ali Coleman.
It's so nice to have you here.
It's so good to be here and see you.
Khadijah is one of our board members, MCM board members, and she was me in this position as the Director of Education and Community Engagement before I took the gig, and has passed the baton on and left us in great hands.
One of the best jobs I've ever had, hands down.
Yeah. So this is our series on the arts, and I wanted to talk to you because you're ingrained in the arts, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what do you think it means to be an artist in this particular climate?
That's such a really deep and nuanced question, mainly because it really leads with the need to define what I think what the arts are. And I think that a lot of times we see people producing or making product, but then the question asks, what differentiates between being a producer and making something versus creating something and being an artist? And I think when we talk about artistry, we're really looking at what is that innovative and intrinsically soulful creation that is coming from an individual that is uniquely their own. I think that when we even look at folks who have skill, when we think of singers, there are many singers, but we don't think all singers are artists, right? We don't think that all writers are literary artists. And so I really think that it's important to look at or consider art as being that intrinsically soulful creation from a person that is uniquely their own. And I think now, I think art has always been evidenced by the culture in which it exists, the time frame in which it exists. And I used to teach an intro class to fine and performing arts at CCBC, Community College of Baltimore County. And opening our class, I would really look at the historical life of this idea of art and looking at it where it started. And you really can look at history through the arts, through the artists that existed. And so we are reflections of our times as artists, and usually we are the documentarians of those times that exist. So how are we creatively or artfully creating during these times? And I think that is so very important, so very impactful to the generation and the culture in which you exist in.
And at MCM, we strive to bring the media to our MoCo residents, Montgomery County residents. But there's an intersection of art and media, especially with content creators, right? Everybody's a content creator.
Exactly.
But as you say, everybody's not an artist. Just because you're creating something, you're creating a piece of media, doesn't necessarily mean that you're an artist. What's that intersection of media and art and content creation and the arts as we think of it traditionally, as we think of the arts?
That's a really good question, because I think it's only within really the last 15 to 20 years, I don't even know if I would go as far back as 20 years, where we have attached arts when we talk about media arts, or even considering, because I think that there is a differentiation between media arts and film. But I think as this whole technology landscape has broadened and made it possible for people to have a tiny computer in their pocket that not only allows you to search for information, but also to create, really has broadened this idea of what media means, what media is. And I think just because of its accessibility, it now can become a tool for artistry. And so that differentiation, look, when we think of media, and what we've thought of it before was this broad film, television, radio. But now when we think of media arts, we're thinking of, animators. We're thinking of people who are doing experimental film documentation, all of these things that can be created and be like in a 10-minute piece. And it's like, what did I just watch? For better or for worse, right? And so I think that, again, it's really, how does the person approach this media as a tool? How are they using it? What is the intention behind it? What is uniquely their unique approach to utilizing this, and what is it that they are wishing to share and impart on the audience? I think of MCM did an award-winning feature a couple of years ago on the Black artists in Montgomery County, and it was I think that series was a work of art depicting visual art. So it was a media arts piece that was depicting visual artists that live in our area. And what made it artistry, in my opinion, was when watching it, everything from the camera angles, the ways that the producer chose to engage with the artist to make it not just a showcase of their art, but also really digging into who they were as people. And those are the things, those types of approaches make an imprint on the work that really differentiates it between just being a static news piece versus something that also can be considered a work of art.
Yeah. So my father was a visual artist, and I have his entire art collection. And my home is filled with all of his art on the walls. And
fantastic.
It's amazing. I'm surrounded by so much energy. But I often wonder what he would think about NFTs and if this original artwork on the wall could then become digitized and monetized. What does that do to the art? How do you think augmented reality? I can go and create. I can say that I'm an artist, and I just talk to an artificial intelligent app, and I get it to create the image. Am I actually an artist at that point, or is the AI the artist? How do you think technology is impacting what we consider to be art? And there's traditional artists, but graphic designers are artists as well, right? They are. So the definition has expanded beyond just visual artists and performing artists.
Right.
But now we're getting into digital art.
Right.
And in this technology, how do you think that's changing?
I think it's, we really have entered a space where it's important for us to create new rules around, and these rules are necessary not only to define what artistry is, but because we live in a society that is so regulated by laws and policy and is undergirded by economics, we're now going in areas where it's very muddied. So I am totally geeked by the idea that I can upload some of my pictures and then AI will shoot out a picture of me looking like a goddess in the universe.
I saw some of your,
your
avatars. They were fabulous.
Right, but do I consider myself an artist because I've given them a selfie? No, of course not. But it's not, the conversations aren't necessarily about me being an artist. The conversations are, where is AI getting these images to superimpose on my selfies to create now this new piece that exists? And because many visual artists are saying that what AI is doing is really doing these laser speed Google searches and, superimposing all these things together to create something new. And how does this infringe on their copyright as artists? And so legally, those conversations now are beginning because, as I said, we really have now, we're moving past this idea of artistry to now, where's their infringement? And I think that that speaks to a larger conversation on ownership. It speaks to a conversation on boundaries. Our technology has now really outpaced kind of the limitations that we had placed on it. I don't think we expected to get here so fast,
Yeah.
where computers now are creating art. So, yeah, I think all of those things for a community resource like MCM, where folks have access to create, those are the things that we're going to have rules about in terms, and we're going to be impacted when it comes to, so suppose someone wants to use an AI image for like an opening credit shot, or as part of just a segment, a transition segment. What are the rules around that? Who owns the original image? So all of this impacts us, and so it's like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Right.
At some point, it's going to question. It's going to impact the ways that we move about as artists, whether we're visual artists, media artists, literary artists. I've just most recently taught at the University of Maryland, and I've taken a break from that. But one of the things I recall last semester is this warning that your students are using GPT for these papers, right? And and so it goes back to what I was saying before. Is this art that the computer is doing,
Right.
or is this something that the student is just creating a product,
Right.
but it's not necessarily something coming from them. So
Right. I teach at in School of Communications at Howard University, and we're all having these conversations
Yes.
about Chat GPT and other AI systems like it. But I will say, embracing the technology, I've had it come up with quizzes. I've had it come up with homework assignments. I know a little bit about how it writes, so that when my students turn in work, and I'm thinking, now you've turned in 6 different kinds of written material. This 7th one, that's not you.
Right.
So as an instructor, we have to get a little bit more creative. Okay, you did your homework assignment. I can't say that it was plagiarism because we can't keep up the technology. We don't know if this really was an AI generated response. But let's do some work in class.
Right.
So
So changing up your modalities, so it's not
Yes.
just things what they're doing away from you.
That's right.
More in classroom. And that is your artistry as an instructor, deciding that these are the things that need to happen to ensure that learning is taking place and synthesis of information is taking place, as opposed to here you go. So I love that example, because that you're basically saying that this is challenging your role, your artistic role as an instructor. That's really deep. I like that.
And we all have to, the technology's not going anywhere. So we're going to have to
Exactly.
embrace it and figure out how we're going to incorporate it
Yeah.
until the guardrails come up and we can figure out what's cheating, what is original content, what is original thought,
Right.
original human thought.
Right. Yep.
And you're right, they are pulling images from all across the internet
Right.
to make that beautiful. I saw your avatars; they were amazing. But they were flying all over Facebook. They were flying all over Meta, all over social media, and that information we're giving up freely, which is our likeness, that we're giving away to a company called I got ready to name the company. I'm sorry, I'm not going to name the company because we're not trying to get sued. So several companies, and we feed it that information, and it's a good thing in that. Hopefully there's diversity of thought and diversity of image, but there are going to be some ethics that we're going to have to think about and talk about. Are all groups represented in the avatar world when we start creating this art?
Right.
And I would like somebody to do a psychological evaluation on why an NFT of a monkey sold so well.
Right.
Like for hundreds of thousands of
Right.
dollars. What does that say about the art that we're looking at?
Right.
And what is art? It now challenges me to think about what art really is.
Right, exactly. I am someone who has been very late to the metaverse, where it's really, you have, it's another world that exists, and understanding the relationship between this world and NFTs, and understanding that when people go into this world, that they want to be able to have unique shirts and things that they, and really just
and unique sneakers. Look,
right.
Y'all got to get a shot of our sneaker game. Our sneaker game's on fire. He's telling us to, like, luckily I do Pilates. He's telling me to put my legs up. Sir. Yeah, our sneaker game's on point. Yeah, so they want to have their own T-shirts, their own sneakers, their own representation.
Right.
And these big brands have gotten on board.
Exactly.
You actually can have a Converse NFT sneaker. You actually can go shopping on, and it does change. I don't know. Have we pushed out graphic artists? Are we as many new careers as we're making? Are we also then pushing out some careers? Do you think?
Right. Well, it's so interesting because I think it's such a blurring between this conversation of talking about artistry and talking about work and economics. And I think that NFTs are a perfect example of where it may not necessarily be art that people, it's still this utilitarian purpose where folks are creating things to exist in this other universe, or really to be the first in something that's going, Bitcoin for a very long time was like people laughing, ha ha ha, you see, but now it is really a very substantive part now of our economic base foundation as a society. And I think that NFT and these things that a lot of people don't really know about are just the early adopters of something that's going to become normalized down. But again, I don't necessarily think that we're talking about art for, in the sense of these unique creations that are soul-driven, that are innovative. We are talking still about things that are part of our capitalism as a society, what is driving things economically. And a lot of times that's not what we consider the best of artistry, or what artistry is. I think it's easier to think of have this conversation when we're talking about music, because we have so many vivid examples of, and the music industry has even deemed a term for things that are mainstream as pop, right? But are all pop artists necessarily artists?
Right.
They record.
There are some studio recordings, studio producers, studio artists that can't necessarily tour.
Right, but we know, and I'm not going to say names to get into some type of battle with folks, but we know that there's some vocalists who are incredible, those still present with us, those who are no longer with us, incredible vocalists, but weren't songwriters, they didn't have anything to do, weren't even arrangers. But then there are people that are just incredible songwriters, they're stage present, the way they're performance artists, even in it's art, even when they just are delivering, even if they're not the best vocalists. So all of these things, all of these considerations, I think are important to a conversation about artistry, and really, I think, challenge someone to be considerate about how they want to show up in the world. Is it solely about the economics? Because you can be in an industry and not necessarily you can be in a performance arts, a visual arts, a literary arts industry without necessarily being an artist, if that makes sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense. We are going to wrap it up soon. I'm getting cues over there. We're going to rack it up soon. But I did want to end with why you decided to join the board and why you think community television and community media is important.
So I definitely believe that accessibility to the media, being able to interpret what's happening around you and share those interpretations is really important to people, especially traditionally disenfranchised people. I think one of the things that I really appreciated about growing up in Montgomery County, working in Montgomery County, is the diversity. It's kind of like a flagship area of the DC metropolitan area where you have people from so many different countries. Those who also may have been, like myself, may have been born in Washington, D.C., but couldn't necessarily afford to stay in Washington, D.C. So it's just like this area is such, I don't like the term melting pot. I like more of a garden mix because it's every piece of a salad still able to retain what they are when in that mouthful. And so a melting pot gives the impression of having to assimilate and to be something other in order to succeed or to continue. And I think that I love the work that MCM is doing. We have Spanish-speaking reporters. We are just making information accessible. We have opportunities for people themselves to become creators, media creators, or even just using our tools to share messages. And, there are three messages: to inform, persuade, or to entertain. And MCM really allows folks to jump in to create messages of, it could be a combination of all three, and MCM really provides the tools to do.
Thank you so much for joining us. My big takeaway is artists that are soulful, that are speaking to the soul, and I'm going to take that forward as we continue the series. So thank you for kicking this series off for us, being our inaugural guest for our ECE podcast. We appreciate you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And hey, just have a great, fantastic, soulful day.
Oh, I love that. You too.
This podcast is supported in part by the Maryland State Arts Council, an agency of the state of Maryland that plays an essential role in ensuring every Maryland resident has access to the transformative power of the arts. Visit them at msac.org.